In this lecture, we'll explore the relationships with vendors. Vendors are external partners. They could be managed service providers, software vendors, hardware suppliers, professional services, and many others that help to deliver digital services. Just like the last lecture, we're going to begin with an example of a scorecard. This time we'll be looking at a vendor scorecard instead of a service scorecard like we did before. Keep in mind, it's not usually the job of the service owner to manage vendors and contracts, but also keep in mind that in many organizations, there aren't vendor managers, and this responsibility may in fact fall on the service owners. We'll begin where we left off with our last lecture on a service scorecard for procurement. At any level, you can have a partner that delivers the service or part of the service. What I mean by that is you can have a vendor that helps you with the entire service, or you can have multiple vendors for different offerings within the service. These partners may be internal partners, in which case you still have some sort of agreement, but it's usually more informal. As shown in the Jagger service offering, where the IT department is the actual vendor that's providing that service offering. There are also your external vendors, as shown under PeopleSoft. Let's drill into this external vendor to have a look at how we might manage this relationship better. Take a minute to explore this profile tab on our vendor scorecard. From this view, we learn things from the very basic, what some might call a level 1 maturity on a scale from 1 to 5, such as name, address, key contacts, and both internal and external key contacts, by the way, to more advanced things like the score that you see on this page. Some may call this a level 4 on a scale from 1 to 5. This is where many want to aspire to as an organization, so that they're empowered to measure and manage to numbers. In this example, our score is derived from a weighted calculation of metrics about the vendor. This isn't a product demo, so on this screen, just be aware of the types of things that you want to base judgment on of your vendors. Interesting, we have 2 contracts with the same vendor. As a service owner, I'd want to know more and maybe even be involved in the next negotiation. You remember when I mentioned earlier that you may or may not have a vendor manager to work with? Well, in the contract case, service owners should always have a partner. The contract contacts are usually in legal or the finance department. It's rare for a service owner to have to manage their own contracts. It is typical for the contract manager within your organization to also manage the vendors, but sometimes that responsibility does land on the service owner's plate, at least in part. Let's take a quick look at a contract before we wrap this one up. The big things on the contract, besides your point of contact, are the start and end date and the terms and conditions. If you are a service owner, you should be aware of these 2 things at a minimum. It's a great relationship to maintain since your contract managers are as dependent on you as you are on them. What they need from you is a good assessment of the value that this contract brings so they can weigh that value against the cost to the organization. A good vendor score isn't enough on its own. Hopefully you found this introduction to vendors and contracts enlightening. These 2 things are topics within themselves that you can go into great depth on, especially when it gets into the legalities. If you want to do your own study on this, you can start an exploration on the types of vendors, which are partners and suppliers. Also the types of contracts, which there are many. There's service contracts, hardware contracts, and even purchase orders are a type of contract. We're considering a lecture on these types of vendors and contracts as a topic in the Service Owner 201, but it's unsure if it'll make the cut yet. Thank you again for your time and attention. We'll see you in the next lecture.